In this section, we'll get started learning the basics of weather. FAA Part 107 regulations require drone pilots to consider weather conditions and density altitude when planning and conducting drone operations. Here are some key considerations for weather and density altitude under Part 107. Standard conditions. FAA Part 107 regulations assume standard atmospheric conditions, which include a temperature of 15 degrees Celsius or 59 degrees Fahrenheit at sea level, a pressure of 29.92 inches of mercury, with a relative humidity of 0%. Density altitude. Density altitude is a measure of the density of the air, which is affected by temperature, pressure, and humidity. High density altitude can affect the performance of the UAS, including its ability to take off, climb, and maneuver. Temperature and humidity. High temperatures and humidity can increase density altitude, which can reduce the UAS's performance. The drone pilot should consider these factors when planning operations and adjust the UAS's performance expectations accordingly. Wind. Strong winds can affect the stability and control of the UAS, making it more difficult to maintain control. The drone pilot should check wind conditions and adjust the flight plan as necessary to maintain safe and stable flight. Cloud cover. Cloud cover can affect the visibility and the ability to maintain visual line of sight, or VLOS, with the UAS. The drone pilot should consider cloud cover and adjust the flight plan as necessary to maintain VLOS. By following these guidelines, drone pilots can ensure safe and effective drone operations in compliance with the FAA regulations. FAA Part 107 regulations require drone pilots to consider wind and currents when planning and conducting drone operations. Here are some key considerations for wind and currents under Part 107. Wind gusts. Wind gusts can be particularly dangerous for UAS operations as they can cause sudden and unexpected movements that can destabilize the aircraft. The drone pilot should be aware of potential for wind gusts and adjust the flight plan accordingly. Currents. If flying over water, the drone pilot should consider currents, which can affect the UAS stability and control. The drone pilot should check current conditions and adjust the flight plan as necessary to maintain safe and stable flight. Wind direction. The drone pilot should also consider the direction of the wind, as it can affect the UAS's flight path and ground speed. The drone pilot should adjust the flight plan to take into account the wind direction and avoid flying directly into strong headwinds. Ground obstacles. Strong winds can affect the UAS's ability to clear ground obstacles, such as trees or buildings. The drone pilot should adjust the flight plan to avoid flying too close to these obstacles and maintain a safe altitude. By following these guidelines, drone pilots can ensure safe and effective drone operations in compliance with FAA Part 107 regulations. FAA Part 107 regulations require drone pilots to consider moisture, dew point, fog, and frost when planning and conducting drone operations. Here are some key considerations for these weather conditions under Part 107. Moisture. Moisture in the air can affect the performance of the UAS, especially if it accumulates on the UAS's sensors or camera lenses. The drone pilot should check humidity levels before conducting a flight and take appropriate measures to protect the UAS from moisture, such as using a protective cover or wiping down the UAS after flight. Dew point. Dew point is the temperature at which moisture in the air begins to condense into dew. If the UAS's temperature is below the dew point, the moisture can accumulate on the UAS, affecting its performance. The drone pilot should be aware of the dew point when planning operations and take appropriate measures to protect the UAS. Fog. Fog can affect the visibility and the ability to maintain visual line of sight with the UAS. The drone pilot should check for fog conditions before conducting a flight and adjust the flight plan as necessary to maintain VLOS. Frost. Frost can accumulate on the UAS's sensors or camera lenses, affecting their performance. The drone pilot should be aware of frost conditions and take appropriate measures to protect the UAS, such as using a protective cover or wiping down the UAS after flight. Icing. Icing can occur when the UAS encounters moisture that freezes on its surfaces, affecting the performance. The drone pilot should be aware of the potential for icing and take appropriate measures to protect the UAS, such as avoiding flights in conditions that could cause icing or equipping the UAS with de-icing systems. By following these guidelines, drone pilots can ensure safe and effective drone operations in compliance with FAA Part 107 regulations. METAR and TAF are two types of weather reports that drone pilots should be familiar with under FAA Part 107 regulations. Here's what you need to know. METAR. METAR stands for Meteorological Terminal Aviation Routine Weather Report. It is a weather report that provides current weather conditions for a specific airport or location. Drone pilots should check METAR reports before conducting a flight to ensure that the weather conditions are safe for drone operations. Here's an example of a METAR report. We've broken it down into 12 sections for you. Please pause and notate anything necessary. TAF. TAF stands for Terminal Aerodrome Forecast. This is a weather report that provides a forecast of expected weather conditions for a specific airport or location. TAF reports are usually issued every 6 hours and cover a period of 24 to 30 hours. Drone pilots should check TAF reports before conducting a flight to anticipate any changes in weather conditions that may affect drone operations. By checking METAR and TAF reports and understanding their contents, drone pilots can ensure safe and effective drone operations in compliance with FAA Part 107 regulations. In this section, we will discuss operations in extreme weather. Under FAA Part 107 regulations, drone pilots should avoid flying in extreme weather conditions that may affect the safe operation of the drone. However, there may be situations where drone operations are necessary in adverse weather conditions. Here are some guidelines for operating drones in extreme weather conditions. High winds. Drone pilots should avoid flying in winds that exceed the drone's maximum safe operating limits. Strong winds can cause the drone to lose stability and control, leading to a crash. Drone pilots should check wind conditions before conducting a flight and adjust their flight plans as necessary. Thunderstorms. Thunderstorms can produce lightning, heavy rain, and high winds, making drone operations unsafe. Drone pilots should avoid flying in thunderstorms and should not conduct flights in the presence of lightning. Ice and snow. Drones may have difficulty operating in icy or snowy conditions due to reduced visibility, loss of GPS signal, and reduced battery life. Drone pilots should avoid flying in icy or snowy conditions and should take appropriate measures to protect the drone from ice and snow accumulation. Extreme temperatures. Extreme temperatures can affect the performance of the drone's battery and electric components. Drone pilots should avoid flying in extreme temperatures that exceed the drone's safe operating limits. Other extreme weather conditions. Drone pilots should be aware of the other extreme weather conditions, such as heavy fog, heavy rain and hail, that may affect the operation of the drone. Drone pilots should check weather conditions before conducting a flight and adjust their flight plans as necessary. By following these guidelines, drone pilots can ensure safe and effective drone operations in compliance with FAA Part 107 regulations, even in extreme weather conditions. Under FAA Part 107 regulations, remote pilots are required to maintain specific cloud ceiling and visibility requirements during their operations. Here are the general requirements. Clouds. Remote pilots must not operate their drones in a cloud when visibility is obstructed by the clouds. However, drones may fly through scattered clouds as long as they maintain visual line of sight with the drone and can see it clearly. Ceiling. Remote pilots must not operate their drones above a ceiling of 400 feet above ground level unless they are flying within 400 feet of a structure, in which they may fly up to 400 feet above the height of the structure. Visibility. Remote pilots must maintain a visibility of at least 3 statute miles, or 1.5 miles for helicopters, from their operating location. Additionally, if they are operating at night, they must have sufficient lighting to maintain visibility of the drone throughout the flight. It's important to note that these are general requirements, and there may be additional restrictions or guidelines based on the specific operation or location. As always, it's the responsibility of the remote pilot to ensure they are following all applicable regulations and guidelines. FAA Part 107 regulations do not specifically address stable versus unstable air, but understanding these concepts is important for safe drone operations. Stable air is air that resists vertical movement, while unstable air is air that readily rises and falls. Stable air typically results in smooth flying conditions, while unstable air can cause turbulence, updrafts, and downdrafts that can affect the flight of a drone. Remote pilots should be aware of the current weather conditions and forecasts as well as any other local terrain or factors that can affect air stability. They should avoid flying in unstable air conditions, such as during thunderstorms, strong winds, or temperature inversions. If flying in conditions with a potential for unstable air, pilots should exercise caution, fly at a lower altitude, and maintain constant situational awareness. It's important for remote pilots to understand the effects of stable versus unstable air on drone flight to ensure safe and successful operations. Additionally, maintaining a thorough understanding of weather patterns and conditions can help remote pilots make informed decisions regarding their flights and reduce the risk of accidents.